Beware, spoiler phobes! You have stumbled into A Storm of Spoilers, a podcast currently covering HBO's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, a series returning us to Westeros decades before Jon Snow and the Good Boy Ghost, and decades after the Incest Dragon War. This podcast is split into two sections. In the first calm section, Neil will prepare us for a trip back to one of our favorite fictional universes, and we'll anticipate what this adaptation will cover. In the second storm section, Neil will use his knowledge of the George R.R. Martin source text to predict this season's surprises and highlight its connections to A Song of Ice and Fire. We're not ruining, we're enriching.
The realm. Do you know what the realm is? It's the 1,000 blades of Aegon's enemies. A story we agree to tell each other over and over till we forget that it's a lie. But what do we have left once we abandon the lie? Chaos. A gaping pit waiting to swallow us all. Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
Why, hello again. I'm Dave Gonzalez, and it's great to be back in Westeros, where I'm illiterate and have not read any of the books in the Song of Ice and Fire universe.
And I'm Neil Miller, and I have read all of the books in the Song of Ice and Fire universe, including The Hedge Knight, a short story by George R.R. Martin. Welcome back to A Storm of Spoilers. Before we get started, a small amount of housekeeping. You may be wondering, when are you going to be getting these podcasts? You're going to be getting new episodes of A Storm of Spoilers every Monday afternoon-ish. During this season of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, only 6 episodes of this show. So for the next 6, maybe 7 weeks, I think this week is preview week. And so you can expect these on Mondays after the show airs on Sunday nights on HBO. And we'll be diving into each one individually. We always start with how you can get in touch with this show. You can send us a raven, stormofspoilers@gmail.com. This week, the specific call is if you have any specific corners that you would like to pitch us for this season of television for Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, specific things you'd like us to call out each week as we go through, send those over, or questions as we get into the season, and questions, comments, and otherwise for the first episode, send them over to stormspoilers@gmail.com. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The rule, of course, leave us a 5-star rating. You can say whatever you want. We have one this week. We got one in between while we were off for a couple of weeks here. A review from Templeflower on Apple Podcasts, who says, I've been diving into the Storm of Spoilers as I was reviewing my 2025 favorite shows. I'm so happy to have Dave and Neil, 2 of my favorite podcasters, back in my feed after their time at The Ringer came to an end. Can't wait to hear what they have to say on 2026's best and possibly worst fandom series. I can't imagine what you mean by possibly worst, but we do have 2 Westeros series coming out this year. I hope that they are among the best, but we'll see.
I like what the Stranger Things and Free Folk fandom I've seen intersect on Reddit to try to help each other through some post finale blues, and then maybe we'll pick up the Stranger Things fans with this hedge knighting.
Yes, you are welcome here, Stranger Things fans. We will help guide you into better pastures. If you would like more from Dave and I, you can join us and support us over at patreon.com/Dave and Neil. That's Da7e and Neil. That support helps not only keep the Patreon up and running, but helps support this show as well. And you get all kinds of bonus content, including access to our past rewatch projects of Twin Peaks and The Leftovers. We're in season 3 of Hannibal if you join at the small council or above level. And most importantly, you get access to our community Slack, which is one of the best places on the internet, especially because most social media is like a fascist hellhole these days.
I'm not thankful for the situation with HBO, probably being sold to Netflix, but I am incredibly tickled that we've kept the level of our Patreon that's the highest as the small council, and HBO keeps making that relevant.
Yes.
So people know what we're talking
We
about.
do appreciate that they keep making Game of Thrones content. You also, if you join the Patreon, get the weekly Adventure Pod, which is currently in Members' Choice Month, which means that all of our patrons are choosing the movies we watch. I believe potentially next week they're going to make Dave watch another Denis Villeneuve movie, which is a fun little torture device that they keep inflicting upon Dave every year. So if you'd like to join in on that, join us, patreon.com/Dave and Neil. All right. That is all of the housekeeping. It is time to move on to the calm. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It was the name of an episode of Game of Thrones. It is now the name of an entire series of Game of Thrones. It is based on a series of short stories by George R.R. Martin. Dave, what do you know about this show?
What do I know? Okay. Remind me, do you know when the first grouping of short stories was actually published?
I do. The first one is called The Hedge Knight, and it was published in 1998.
All right.
The second one is called The Sworn Sword. Oh boy, that's a lot. 2003.
Okay.
Third one is called The Mystery Knight, and that was published in 2010. And here's fun one, Dave. Here's the fun part. These are 3 of a planned 12-story series that George R.R. Martin has outlined that he intends to write. As always, he is working on it. And apparently he has like another 2 of these almost done. Allegedly.
Okay. Sure.
And he has, according to the folks that worked with him on the World of Ice and Fire Almanac book, he has heavy outlines for all 12 that basically span the time from here all the way to about like right before the Song of Ice and Fire story starts. So like basically from here to the birth of Rhaegar Targaryen, Daenerys' older brother.
So I have 2 thoughts about that. First of all, if you scroll back on this Storm feed, which you should, you will find our Lost Rewatch podcast that we did around pandemic time. And a lot of what we talked about when we were talking about Lost is this period of time in sort of American television and storytelling society where we wanted our creators to be like, there is a path. We are on that path. We are sticking to the path and we're rushing towards a conclusion. You are not wasting time by investing in these story worlds, in these characters, in these mysteries that we're planting on the island and elsewhere. And a lot of that, I think, was, I don't know, born out of some sort of narrative uncertainty, or maybe the beginnings of a transition into sort of media consumers enjoying serials a little bit more as the internet and things gave us more access to like streaming media. It was no longer a, sort of chance of catching reruns and whatnot. So people were allowed to sort of really commit to their story universes. And so what it sounds like to me is while writing A Clash of Kings, which also came out in 1998, George R.R. Martin is like, I need to know some backstory. And the way that he is, as I understand, is he really overdoes that. If it's anything like our Targaryen histories that I guess were also in the middle of being published. So if you believe George R.R. Martin, and of course the main series, which still needs 2 more books to come. So I feel like these are, I don't know, writing exercises in sort of like plotting that he then turned into writing exercises and writing in this world, and maybe really found something in these stories, I hope, that he enjoyed, that kept him interested a little bit more than he was on the main series of books. However, when was the last Hedge Knight or one that in this series published again?
Which was
2010,
16 years ago at this point. I think, well, no, I think you've identified a pretty You kind of hit it on the head. This is a really good example of two things. One, George R. R. Martin's just legendary generational ADD. An example of how he gets himself distracted. But I think, unlike Fire and Blood, which I think was him getting distracted by writing sort of a overall history of the Targaryens, this is him falling in love with like these two characters specifically, Dunk and Egg. And he ends up wanting to just write out their story from beginning to, you know, what ends up being sort of their story, their lives sort of end near the beginning of A Song of Ice and Fire, right? They live to be old men. Spoiler alert, I guess.
I mean, maybe I don't even know
they're
how much I should care about these people yet.
Among the rare Westerosis who live to be old men.
I mean, I guess we do know that if he's saying he has more planned than the text that we already have.
And of these 12 books, many of them include significant time jumps. Like there's big time jumps between the three that already exist as well.
So I guess my other television question that I have in this type of storytelling and how it's evolved into like the streaming era is, granted that we have a big gap here, how much, I guess, prequelitis is this story going to have? Are they going to be like, oh, and here's, you know, I don't know, weird character that, you know, you see his descendant in Game of Thrones and he's going to play a side part in this side scene at a campfire or something?
I would say this one will be able to avoid most of that for at least its first 2 seasons.
Because my understanding is this is a different perspective than we've gotten because of the world, because it's not about a battle over a throne necessarily.
Right. I mean, there's still plenty of blondes. There's still going to be plenty of Targaryens, and they're very much in charge at this point still, right?
Hair color is still important.
Yeah, we're still many years before Robert's Rebellion, and so the Targaryen dynasty is still in full effect. It is many years after the last dragon has. Well, I guess not many years, but it's several years after the last dragon has died. So there aren't really any real dragons anymore, but the Targaryens are still around. And there aren't going to be any characters that we recognize, at least initially. They are going to be around eventually. And some of these characters... There's one specific one that we'll talk about in the Storm that I think could show up as early as like a season 2, but I don't think they'll show up in a season 1. That is a character we would recognize from Game of Thrones.
Okay.
But that's about it.
So I guess also now you're reminding me that in this time period in Westeros, if the last dragon has died, then we're in the sort of not magic. Magic is scarce and rare, and it's sort of like the Jedi in between the prequel series and the main series of Star Wars, where I'm not expecting a lot of magic here. This is a norm, but probably just shitty people doing shitty things, as I expect in Westeros normally. True,
but all of these people, a lot of like the adults who exist in this time in Westeros, remembered the dragons and were around when dragons were still a thing. So the memory of it's not quite the same as when we pick up in A Song of Ice and Fire and dragons are just sort of like a tall tale, or, you know, old Nan's tales of magic.
Right. Ice spiders big as house.
Yeah. Like some of these people actually remember their, you know, grandparents or their parents getting fried by a dragon.
So I guess odds of a surprise dragon. It sounds like you said that you were pretty sure the last one was dead, but
yeah, I think the last
one.
Is
there a mystery dragon?
Well, and that's the thing. By this point, and the last dragon, according to Fire and Blood, was sort of a very small, sickly dragon that lived in King's Landing and was unable to reproduce, and it was sort of a sad situation. So, like, we're going to see eventually in House of the Dragon how the last big dragons die, and it's spectacular. And that happens, many years before this. So there's no chance that we're going to see a real dragon here. We might see some cool fake dragons, though.
What does that mean?
There is in this story there are, and this is one thing that's very exciting. There's a really good mummers play that involves a dragon.
Oh,
so
all right.
We do get a peek in one of the trailers at what appears to be a dragon, and what appears to be kind of a cool looking dragon, and that is part of a play that's being put on.
Nice. Love me a play within a play. It has been too long
with a
since Arya Stark has been
pretty good special effects budget for that play. In universe special effects budget, it appears.
I mean, I am interested to see special effects budget wise, once again, stepping out of the boundaries of the story. How, granted, this is a shorter show in terms of episode run, and then my understanding it's also a shorter show in terms of run time of each episode. So it's going to be interesting to see where they decide to put the budget into. I imagine we're going to get a certain amount of deleting things that shouldn't exist. Do you know much about I don't know. It's a Storm question. I can't ask you like, what do you think the battle episode equivalent is? I remind myself to ask you that in the Storm.
Sure.
Let's start from the beginning. Oh, yeah.
No, go ahead with your question.
Oh, I want to start from the beginning and just George R. R. Martin really likes these characters, Dunk and Egg. What do I need to know about them that made George R. R. Martin like them so much?
Well, I think one of the things that maybe George likes about them, and one of the things that makes them very interesting as characters, is that they live among the small folk. So we are going back to sort of the ground level, I would say a little bit more of like the season 1 Game of Thrones on the King's Road sort of traveling. Because Ser Duncan the Tall is a Hedge Knight. And Hedge Knights are the freelance knights of Westeros. Basically, they're not knights of any one particular house. They sort of travel around, and they're not quite like Bronn of the Blackwater, right? They're not sellswords. They're honorable traveling knights who will do good, I guess, but aren't necessarily always tied to any one particular banner. An Egg is just a little boy, a little bald boy, who's a small child, and he just wants to be a squire. And Dunk sort of picks him up along the way. And when we meet Dunk, he is a newly minted Hedge Knight, and his mentor has just passed. And we see that in the trailer. That's Sir Arlen, who was his very old Hedge Knight mentor, has passed, and now Sir Dunk must go and find his way. And really the only advantage he has, again, is that he's very tall, but he's a nice dude. So we'll see. And really all we know about these two kids is that they're, sort of lost, and they find each other, and now they're traveling together, and they're trying to sort of make their way to a tournament in Ashford. And what I think is going to be really interesting is, again, where the budget goes on a show like this is doesn't necessarily have to be into huge battles, and it doesn't necessarily have to be into huge castles, because we're going to Ashford, which is a relatively small town in the Reach, and a relatively small castle. But it's going to probably go into a lot of costuming, a lot of armoring, and a lot of colorful banners that we will need, because we're going to a tourney, and we're going to be meeting a lot of knights who think they're very fancy. And when knights come together for a tourney, they obviously are going to be dressed to the nines and be wearing their fanciest armor and competing to be known as the best knight of the day, and then I think that it brings together a lot of big personalities from all the big houses, which is really fun because it's going to bring together some of the houses that we know and love and some of the new ones, and it will build upon the lore of some of these houses, and it's not going to be quite as much focused on the castle intrigue that Game of Thrones is all about, right? Which is like who's gonna take the Iron Throne. In this world, the Iron Throne is currently occupied by King Daeron the Good, who is chill and everybody kind of likes him. And he's got a bunch of kids and grandkids, a bunch of blondes who are a wide variety of good and bad. And we'll meet a bunch of them. So, but I don't even think we're going to meet him. So,
oh man. Well, I mean, I have a lot of questions off of that. Let's
But
try
here's
to,
the thing.
I guess,
the reason why it's a little bit shorter,
yeah.
the 6 episodes and maybe only 45-minute episodes, the entire audiobook for the first novella, The Hedge Knight, is only 3 hours. And
nice.
It's not a particularly long story. And listen, if you've never read it and you want to read it and do the audiobook, it is read by Harry Lloyd, who played Viserys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, and he does some amazing voice work in it. So I highly recommend the audiobook.
Oh man, is this the Game of Thrones series that gets me to read George R.R. Martin? I'm very tempted just by hearing that we are already committing to making more podcast content than the length of the entire audiobook. So that heartens me that it is possible. I have some Hedge Knight questions.
Mm-hmm.
You said they're sort of like honor bound. Is there like a code or an oath or a house? Like, how do you, if you are a freelancer and you're not in it for the money, then you're in it to just like make the world a better place? Do you have like some sort of god that you've pledged to?
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of it's a wandering knight without a master. And they're out there looking for gainful employment.
Okay.
And it's basically just like there's 2 different types of knights. There's like a hedge knight and a landed knight. A landed knight is sworn to a house. So like you could be a knight of Storm's End and you'd be sworn to House Baratheon. And a hedge knight is more like they're just traveling around, but they still are try to be like chivalrous, and they still try to uphold sort of like the chivalrous knights code. Whereas like a sellsword, like a Bronn of the Blackwater, doesn't have like a chivalrous code. They're more just like selling their sword to whoever. They'll do piracy. They'll do banditry. They'll do whatever. And there are some hedge knights in the history of Westeros who turn to that, and they're called robber knights, right?
Okay.
They become bad guys.
I like the different knight classifications. Yeah. So now what I'm hearing is we're doing a wolf and cub. We're doing a sort of Ronin.
Yeah, a little bit.
Gets a little. All right.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a Westeros version of Wolf and Cub or The Mandalorian, this is kind of it, right? Where we have our unlikely hero, Ser Duncan the Tall, who is really kind of a nobody. He's an orphan from Flea Bottom who was taken up by Sir Arland of Pennytree, and he becomes a hedge knight, and then he finds and meets Egg, and Egg becomes his squire. And Egg, and that's the thing, is like Egg is not someone that you would normally take as a squire because he's a small boy. He's sort of a diminutive little dude, and he's fun. He's very funny and goofy, and has his own sort of quirks and interesting lineage.
Is he an intelligent small boy? Is that what we're supposed to sort of?
He's very
glean?
smart.
Okay.
And one of the funny things that happens when Egg first meets Dunk is he immediately recognizes that he's never heard of Duncan the Tall. And Duncan is like, well, how do you know that I'm not a famous knight? Do you know every knight in Westeros? And Egg is like, yeah, pretty much. I know all the knights, and I don't know you, because no one's ever heard of Ser Duncan the Tall, because he just became a Hedge Knight like literally yesterday. So
I'm glad that, especially amongst the small folk, I'm definitely going to be on watch for who is literate in our story, and therefore who could get information from letters and histories.
For sure.
But like, I also like the Wolf and Cub outline, and especially for like a Ronin or an honor-based knight, because then, you know, there's the possibility that Dunk gets tempted or Egg gets tempted, and they have to, you know, weigh honor versus benefits, and those are some good stories. I'm interested in this tournament, but also in Ashford, which you mentioned, that we're going to be, I'm assuming, traveling to this location and then show up. But I also have not heard of Ashford before.
Sure.
I don't think.
This is actually the first time Ashford appears in any of the stories. This tourney at Ashford that Ser Duncan eventually makes it to. Ashford is in the Reach, which is where Highgarden is the seat of power. Ashford is about halfway, 2/3 of the way from King's Landing to Highgarden. So it's in some pretty like fertile, summery land.
Lots of flowers.
It is sort of along the mountains that separate the Crownlands from Dorne. So we may encounter some Dornish. I don't know. This is in a time where the Dorne is still not super friendly with the Seven Kingdoms, but I do think it's after Dorne has been brought into the Seven Kingdoms. So there aren't any like Dornish wars happening. So nice. But it is along the marches, Ashford. So it should be some pretty good climate. It's not cold. We're not in the north. Even though the actor who plays Duncan has a very northern accent, but you know, and it's like south of Tumbleton, which that'll be relevant when we get to House of the Dragon season 3, but we'll come back to that. So
okay, good. I got time to remember what you mean by that.
Yeah, but Ashford is smallish castle, which means that probably not a huge budget for the castle establishing shots. In fact, it's being shot, this is kind of cool. They shot this series in some of the original Game of Thrones locations in Northern Ireland, which is different than House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon's shooting in Leavesden, which is not the same locations as old GOT. This is Ashford Castle will be Myra Castle, which was used as the Dreadfort, which was the Bolton Castle in Game of Thrones.
Ooh.
So they're reusing that location. And the House Ashford is Bannerman of House Tyrell. So we will maybe see a Lord Tyrell of some kind here. I would assume that this Lord Tyrell would be like Lady Olenna's father. If the time is right. Yes, this would be like Lady Olenna's father.
Nice. So future scheme queen forebear. I enjoy that. I also like that we're in some fertile grounds. That it seems nice to me in terms of some background. Also good for our small folk. Lots of places to camp. I appreciate some comfortable camping. I just expect that in this series. All right, I like this. In terms of like a tournament, I know they've been called as like games before, obviously, some sort of distraction, some sort of celebration for a wedding or whatnot. Do I know, or should I know at this point, why we're going to a tournament, or is that something the story's going to explain to me?
Well, this period of Westeros is a period where there isn't a whole lot of war going on. So nice. This is a time of a lot of tourney just for tourney's sake. right?
Cool.
We need to go play war because the knights have nothing better to do. So it's time where they're just having tourneys, right?
Nice.
Like they just have a lot of tourneys because they don't have a lot of wars to fight. So I can't even say that I know, having read the book, why they're having a tourney. It's just because they have a lot of tourneys. So,
well, how better to show off your finery and skills and presumably if you do well in a tournament, get jobs in an honor-based job market.
Yeah, it was such a peaceful time that they had basically a tourney circuit that these knights were on, and it was all about trying to go from being a lowly knight to a well-known knight, and that was sort of the concern of the day, at least for the likes of Ser Duncan the Tall.
Before we transition into the storm where we're going to speculate a little bit more about who's going to show up to this tourney, I think. What do you think the odds are, should this first season of a Night of the Seven Kingdoms do well, that this series also outpaces the remaining books in which it is supposedly based on?
Oh, I think the universe has a sense of humor, so 100%. I think it's already been renewed for season 2, right?
All right, so that would be presumably the Sworn Sword adaptation season. I mean, if we're doing one novella per season.
They've got 3 novellas, so safe to say they've got 3 seasons planned. George apparently has 5 in the can, or at least 5 mostly done. So you would assume that they've got a pretty solid plan for 5 seasons of this. I personally, if George's plan is what he has said it is, really like this, because if they can get all the way up to the 12th book, it really does get us to like one of the most pivotal events in the history of Westeros that like really defines could redefine our understanding of what happens after that. But that's a long way away. That would require 12 seasons of this show. But, 6 episodes a season, relatively short. You could pump these out pretty quickly. So I think,
well, and if you decide, if it's super popular, you could also be like, we're doing 10 episodes and you're doing 2 novellas a season.
Or this could be, we'll see how this works, but this could be a really fun sort of intermission show where it's like you have your big Thrones show going, your House of the Dragon, maybe, 1,000 Ships is your next one, or the Aegon's Conquest show is your next one. And those are like the big ones that come out every other year. And then you have this one in between that's just like a little fun one, every other year. And you could run it for a long time while these other bigger spin-off shows are running. I kind of see the vision. And, this is the only actor that, with the time jumps, you could be recasting. You'd be recasting Egg either way, several times over. Like I guarantee you, the kid who's playing him here maybe has to be recast by like season 3, given the time jumps, and you could eventually have to recast the Dunk guy to be an old man, or you just make up. So I think that this is
some deep fake technology in there.
Yeah, this is the kind of show that you could run all the way to 12 seasons, but I think that would very quickly outpace George. And why not? Why not do it again?
To just get him to release something, to finish something.
Let's put pressure on George again and see what happens.
See what happens. Maybe, he could wrap up in time to, for the Game of Thrones reboot series that presumably is waiting for him to finish his novels.
Yeah. I mean,
have you heard?
If it would be easier for him to finish these than it would be, I guess, for him to finish Winds of Winter at this point. So.
I mean, there's been rumblings. There's always rumblings, but there's been rumblings that this time with Winds of Winter, he's gone to the Expanse guys for help, which is an interesting rumor. Why help with what? To do what? Anyway, George, keep going, man. At least we get more TV shows.
He's working on it.
He's working on it. Well, we're going to get a little bit more detailed into what to expect with A Night of the Seven Kingdoms in our Storm section. But if you want to remain completely unspoiled, we will see you next week after the premiere episode. Otherwise, let's head into The Storm.
I am the storm, brother. The first storm and the last. And you're in my way.
All right. Neil, you skipped something in the notes that is going to be important to my question. So I'm going to instead just start with my question. Apparently, Ser Duncan inherits 3 horses.
Yes, he does. Sir Arlen has 3 horses.
Okay.
And they are. Hold on. Let me pull them up.
I mean, you definitely put the names in the notes somewhere when you're Thunder, Chestnut, and Sweetfoot.
Yes, Thunder, Chestnut, and Sweetfoot. One is a war horse. One is just like a normal ass horse, and one I think he sells pretty quickly to get some armor.
How much can I care about these horses? I guess one's sold, but like
these horses are pretty chill.
Is this a never-ending story situation? Okay.
I will warn you, though, there are going to be some horses in this story who don't meet a good end. Because, like I mentioned, there are some Targaryens in this story that are a variety of good and bad. One of which has a particular move that involves being mean to horses.
Oh.
In the context of the tourney, like he's not like abusing horses randomly, but like when it comes to jousting, he's got a move that involves aiming at his opponent's horse, and that's pretty shitty. But it's very on brand for him. So not all horses are going to escape this. And listen, would it be a tourney in Westeros if something horrible didn't happen to a horse? Hard to say.
Fair. I just was wondering, maybe like in a search for corners, are the horses okay? Was definitely my my initial question reading all of your notes.
Yeah, are these horses going to be okay? Probably. Are all the horses going to be okay? Not so much.
Sure. And I'm sure all the people aren't going to be okay.
Oh, definitely not.
Let's talk a little bit more about this tournament. Who's going to show up? Who do I need to remember are houses of Westeros? Well,
we're going to do a little bit of banner watching, which I'm very excited about because that means production staff gets to make all these cool, colorful banners. We, of course, have our Targaryens. There are a lot of Targaryens, and the Targaryen family tree is wide and vast in this particular story. And even though I do not think we're going to meet King Daeron the Good, who is, for context, the great-grandson of Rhaenyra and Daemon from House of the Dragon.
So it's not the Daeron that has been off screen.
No.
Okay.
This is like...
That's what is he daring?
Daeron the Daring. This is Daeron the Good.
Okay.
This is like
okay,
another 2 generations down. So Daeron the Good is the king currently. And we're going to meet his 2 sons, though. Baelor Breakspear, who is the Prince of Dragonstone and the current heir to the Iron Throne. And Maekar, who is the Prince of Summerhall and the other brother. Basically the sort of second in line. And then we're going to meet Maekar's 2 sons. Aerion, who is his second son, who's a bit of a dick. And Daeron, another Daeron, who is his firstborn, who's a bit of a drinker. And so those guys are all going to be sort of in the mix. And what's fun about them is that they're, we're still at the height of the Targaryen dynasty, which means that they're all a bunch of rich assholes. And so they all have like really cool armor, and when they show up to the tourney, it's very flashy. So it's going to be very fun. We're going to get a Baratheon, which I'm very excited about.
Ooh,
Lionel,
all right,
the Laughing Storm.
So some antlers,
some stag action. We are going to get a Dondarrion, Manfred Dondarrion. We remember Beric Dondarrion, he of the flaming sword in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's
been a while.
Their banner is a purple lightning bolt. We didn't really get to see a lot of that in Game of Thrones because when we meet Beric Dondarrion, he's already like his like third, fourth, or fifth death in to his immortality situation, and he's sort of left his family banner. So I think Manfred would be like Beric's grandfather-ish, maybe. I don't know if he's directly his grandfather, but Manfred is, I believe, he's not the Lord Dondarrion yet, but he's like the heir to the Dondarrion. He's like the Lord's son.
Okay.
So there's a purple lightning bolt. There's a Beesbury in here somewhere. So we're going to get the Beesbury. You remember Lord Lyman Beesbury from House of the Dragon? He's the one who died pretty horribly, but they have the beehives on their banner. So that's pretty fun. And then we're going to be on the lookout for some apples, Dave, because there are fossilways.
Oh, okay.
There are multiple fossilways. Cousins.
I finally have to know about the fossilways.
Yes, cousins, Stefan and Raymond. And we will finally learn about their apple banners and maybe where this whole green and red apple thing comes from, just as a tease.
Good to know.
And what's going on with the fossilways. It's great. It's very, very delightful. So they're going to be in the tournament. We got some newbies, House Riesling and House Harding are going to be there. We'll meet them. They're some characters, some heavy hitting dudes that are going to be in there.
Do we know about from where they're from? Are they all from like this middle section of Westeros?
House Riesling and House Harding. House Harding, he is Harold Harding. They're from the Vale.
All right.
And Harold Harding is I believe, brother-in-law of the Beesbury, who is going to be here.
Okay.
So that's fun. So that's a Vale guy for you.
I didn't know the Vale and the Bees were connected by marriage. That's nice to know.
And then House Riesling is from the Reach. So House Riesling is a little bit more local to Ashford. And their nice. Banner is like a wall with a door. It's like a black wall with a tan door. I don't know.
Sure.
But, they'll be there too. And then we have several members of the Kingsguard that participate in the tourney, or that participate in the story. And they are, of course, the White Cloaks. And we'll recognize them pretty easily. And then
we'll recognize them as Kingsguard, or we'll recognize them as characters.
We'll recognize them as Kingsguard.
Cool.
Because of their white cloaks.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then, we have Ser Duncan the Tall, who's a Hedge Knight, and we'll be following him around pretty exclusively. And I don't think we're actually going to meet Sir Arlen of Pennytree alive, because the story starts with him being dead.
Just like Game of Thrones, and what's his face was dead at the beginning.
And I'm pretty sure in the trailer we see Duncan burying him, which is how the book starts. So I think Sir Arlen is just a dead body. But maybe we'll get some flashback. They did cast an actor as Sir Arlen, so I don't know if we'll get flashbacks of him at some point.
I memean, that could be fun. Again, I'm very interested in what sort of honor-bound system we end up living by.
Sure.
So flashing back to Sir Arlen would make a bunch of sense.
Yeah, and for Duncan, it is all based on what Sir Arlen has taught him, right? Because it's like this guy, there isn't like a Hedge Knight school that you go to. It's just like whatever your mentor taught you is what you believe to be true.
Right. And he inherits his armor as well.
He inherits his armor and his horses and his sword. And as is pointed out in the trailer, he does not have a belt, which becomes sort of a point of contention. So,
nice.
Yes, use a piece of rope.
Gotta figure out what to do. And then So in terms of Sir Arlen of Pennytree, Sir Duncan also becomes, I guess, of Pennytree by like he carries around the Pennytree sigil or something.
No, Sir
'Cause you said
Duncan.
he's an orphan from Flea Bottom.
Well, yeah, Sir Duncan is an orphan from Flea Bottom, and he goes by Ser Duncan the Tall, just because he's tall.
Nice.
And he creates his own coat of arms, which is this tree. It's not necessarily the penny tree. It's a tree that we will see in the story. I believe it's the same tree that he buries Sir Arlen under, and a shooting star over it, which is key. It happens in this story. He sees a shooting star. And
yeah, I think I see that in the trailer. It brings good luck to whoever sees it.
Yeah, so this is that's ultimately Ser Dunk's coat of arms that he carries with him throughout his life, and that's pretty cool. And that here, you want some Dunk lore?
Yeah,
that is a coat of arms that is later used by a very familiar knight in Feast for Crows. Brienne of Tarth uses that coat of arms to travel incognito across Westeros when she's traveling, for her mission for Catelyn Stark, because Ser Dunk's armor and stuff ends up in her father's collection on Tarth. And so this is, a lot of people have, George at one point teased that we have met in the Game of Thrones story a descendant of Ser Duncan the Tall. And everyone was like, it's obviously Brienne because she's tall. And then George was like very cheeky about it. And he's like, well, everything will be revealed in time, like suggesting that it's like in Winds of Winter. And then, of course, he didn't fucking finish Winds of Winter. So nobody really knows for sure. But this connection, the fact that Brienne uses his coat of arms and all of his armor is in Randall Tarth's collection, suggests that maybe somewhere along the line, Ser Duncan is in the lineage of Brienne.
So then, was it a wink that the episode where Brienne gets knighted was called "The Knight of the Seven Kingdoms"? Was it like, maybe. Oh, look at this?
Maybe. So, I mean, it's a little on the nose that the two tallest knights of Westeros are related, but it's still kind of fun too.
There have been dumber things. There have been dumber things in fiction than that happening.
But it's been a while since I've gone back to the old Thrones episodes. I have not gone back to look and see if they actually did use Ser Duncan's crest for Brienne when she was traveling.
And if that ended up being important.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, we're going to have Barristan Selmy show up.
Well, maybe
as a child.
Well, okay. So here's more Dunk lore that's important, and this is stuff that wouldn't show up until later seasons. I don't think. Okay. Because this is where Dunk shows up in the lore of Game of Thrones. So Dunk is also, well, I guess first there is this thing about Egg. Do you want to know the thing about Egg?
Yeah, I think I know the thing about Egg because I remember this from old Storm spoilers.
Okay.
Because someone dreamed they were old and I had to be told that was important.
Okay. Egg, I dreamed I was old. This is the Egg that Maester Aemon is talking about. So Egg is Aegon Targaryen. He is another Targaryen. And the reason why he's bald is because they had to shave off his blonde hair so that he could travel incognito. So little Egg is a little Targaryen. He is Maekar Targaryen's other son. So when we meet Maekar, he has 3 sons: Aerion, Darion, and Aegon. And this Egg, eventually, his 4th brother is Aemon, who becomes Maester Aemon, who is the Maester at the Wall with Jon Snow.
Yeah.
And so this Egg eventually, way down the line, many years from now, becomes King Aegon V, who is the father of Jaehaerys II and the grandfather of Aerys II, also known as the Mad King, which makes him the great-grandfather great great grandfather of Daenerys Targaryen.
Yeah.
So this egg is very important. And so that is the context in which we must also understand that, like, when he and Duncan have this friendship that lasts their entire lives, eventually Duncan the Tall is friends with the king. You know, like he goes from being this boy as his squire to this boy is now the king and his friend. So Dunk is the guy who escorts Maester Aemon to Eastwatch when he joins the Night's Watch. And it's like Dunk is there when Maester Aemon joins the Night's Watch. Barristan Selmy very famously made his name by defeating Duncan the Tall when he was 16 in a tournament.
So not this tournament, though.
Oh no, not this. This is much later in Duncan's life. This is after I mean, Barristan Selmy. This is after Duncan. This is, I believe, while Aegon was king. And Duncan the Tall at this point is like the Lord of the Kingsguard, and Barristan Selmy enters the tournament as a mystery knight and defeats him, and it's like a huge deal, right? Because at this point Dunk is like a very famous knight.
Right.
So yeah. So there's
when do we get this egg reveal, do you think? Is it something we know like at the end of the first episode?
I would say this is going to happen within the first 2 or 3. Probably I would say no later than the 3rd episode. Maybe not the first episode, but it happens pretty early in the story. And it's more about like the audience isn't going to be kept. I would say the audience isn't going to be kept in the dark for very long, because Duncan figures it out pretty quickly. Because once they get to the tourney and all the other Targaryens are there, everybody recognizes Egg.
That makes sense when you think
because 2 of the
about
Targaryens are like, wait, that's my little brother.
Why are you being a squire to this dude?
Like, what the hell are you doing here?
I like it. I'm trying to figure out what I'm most invested in this story, especially given I think it's short breadth. I love, again, all of the sort of look at the houses of the Reach and like sort of this place of plenty in this a peaceful time. I think is going to be a fun perspective to take. But as knowing that thing about Egg and trying to avoid it in the calm, this is also George R.R. Martin seems very interested in just the Targaryen family. So considering that we do have House of the Dragon as our other running series, how in danger is this story of being overtaken by Targaryens as we progress?
I mean, there is quite a lot that is about the Targaryens in this one. And I would say that there's 2 sort of running themes that I took away from, especially this first book, the first novella, The Hedge Knight. One is it's all about what does it mean to be a good knight, like a true knight of Westeros, like a truly chivalrous good knight, and stand up for, truth and justice. And then 2, the whole idea of like when the gods flip a coin on the Targaryens, right? Some of them come down and they're just genuinely mad, and some of them are good. And I think that what we get with Egg is that we genuinely get to know him as a good little guy before we really realize that he's a Targaryen. And then we meet some of his family members, and they are the other side of the coin. And we have to sort of deal with the fact that Egg is on the protagonist side, right? He's on Team Duncan, and the antagonists are literally like his brothers, So
yeah,
that is going to be sort of the core tension of the series, at least in this first season.
So then I would guess our sort of battle episode or a climax equivalent is at this tournament when Duncan has to take on one or more Targaryens. That's going to be like the episode, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And then finally, you were saying that George's novellas, should they all proceed as planned, bring us to sort of like a big event, like they're building
Sure.
to it. And I heard sort of like, how Andor is building to the Battle of Yavin sort of thing.
Mhm.
But what event are we building towards, given your Westerosi knowledge?
Well, and this is kind of wild. And this would take them doing 12 seasons of this and George finishing 12 short stories. But it gets us all the way to what is called the Tragedy of Summerhall, which is the day that Rhaegar Targaryen was born, Daenerys' older brother, Rhaegar, he of the Battle of the Trident and Jon Snow's dad, all that shit. He was born at Summerhall. And on that same day, there was a massive fire that burned. And Summerhall was, as we'll learn, from Maekar Targaryen, who was the second in line here in this story. He's the Lord of Summerhall. It was sort of like the secondary castle, beneath Dragonstone. It was like the summer home of the Targaryen, princes, and was given to the next in line. And it burned down, and that is actually where Dunk and Egg and one of Egg's sons die.
Oh, okay.
This is where their lives end at the Tragedy of Summerhall. And in a very legendary fashion and a very tragic fashion. They're very old men at this point. But it is a very big situation. And I believe it is the catastrophe that leads to the Mad King being crowned, right? Ultimately, Aerys takes over, and that goes poorly, as
Right.
you well know. And eventually Robert's Rebellion happens, and Song of Ice and Fire happens, and all that shit. So, it sort of sets off the story, and it's this big burning of this massive castle, and it all sort of happens the same day that Rhaegar was born. And for many people, it is, including Maester Aemon for a long time, they believed that was a sign that Rhaegar was the prince that was promised.
Because he pulls a sword from the flames or something as a child.
All kinds of little bits of lore in there.
Good to know. Can't wait to remember what that is 12 years from now on HBO.
Yeah. It would be very cool to get there, because that means we will have followed these characters through their entire lives from here to their end at Summerhall. And that would also mean that we would get to a version of this series that would include and I think this is kind of exciting if they can pull it off, if HBO can pull this off, because then we would get a young version of Tywin Lannister. We get young Olenna Tyrell. We get the Mad Kings. We get a young Maester Aemon. We get all those cool old elder characters that we had in Game of Thrones. We get to see the younger versions of them. We get a young Barristan Selmy. I think this could be that series, but it requires not only HBO to be committed to this for 12 seasons, but also maybe George to finish 12 short stories, which, TBD.
TBD indeed. So you have a challenge for me that by the end of the first episode, I'm supposed to guess which one of the Targaryens famously dies later in life after drinking wildfire, thinking it will turn him into a dragon, which is the most Targaryen way to go out that I've heard yet.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is something we would have discussed during Game of Thrones, because this is a legendary death for one of the Targaryens.
Yeah.
But we are actually going to meet the character in this show who dies in this way, and it's one very specific dude. And so I believe we're going to meet all of the Targaryens by the end of the first episode. So I can't wait to see who you think it is.
Yeah, I can't wait to see if it's the other side of the coin like you were talking about, or if it's somebody who's just kind of dreamily into dragons. Can't wait to see what this characterization is.
Yeah.
We've gotten Targaryens with both.
Yeah, and I guess the only one that it isn't is Egg. Sorry. I may have already told you how Egg dies, so...
I mean, I don't think it's necessary, especially when we're dealing with the show that is itself a history in a fictional fantasy universe. I'm okay with knowing how these things die, how these people die. It will be interesting to see if we are, building a greater arc when this show decides to assert itself as being a greater arc. I think the first season is really going to have to try to be successful on its own legs. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't get prequelitis and, starts foreshadowing Summerhill
My
deaths.
best guess is that this first season will be able to stand on its own and should be a lot of fun because it's very focused on just being present at this tourney and sort of this sort of quagmire that Duncan gets himself into by just trying to become a famous knight and how that kind of goes wrong for him at first.
Can't wait to find out. And I can't wait to bring Banner Watch into the calm. Hopefully we get to do that sooner rather than later, but maybe we have to build to a tournament. I'm fine with that. I'm just glad that I'm allowed to care about two of the horses that will hopefully get names. And it's not a never-ending story situation. All right, Neil, I think that's it. Unless you have anything you want to add, we will be back next week covering the first episode of A Night of Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight. Well, I will learn who Duncan the Tall is and try to pick out which Targaryen fancies themselves a dragon. Until then, go out there and be excellent to each other. It's the code.